Ever find yourself scratching your head when a new employee needs a phone line? Especially with on-prem systems, AD the cloud in the mix.
It's a jungle out there.
It can be, but that's where Skype for Business phone system comes in. And today, we're diving deep.
Deep dive time.
Exactly. We're figuring out how to enable this, particularly in a hybrid environment, right?
Right.
And hey, we've got this Microsoft Learn article to guide us. Don't worry, we're cutting through the jargon to get you what you need to know. Clear and simple.
Absolutely.
Okay. Before we get too far ahead, though,
Yeah.
we are assuming you've got that on-premises PSTN connectivity all set.
The groundwork, yeah.
Yeah, think of it like laying the foundation, this deep dive. We're talking finishing touches, getting those phone lines up and running.
It's a very common scenario, by the way. You've got those existing systems, but then the cloud is calling. It's a hybrid world for many.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you know what? Speaking of things that can throw you for a loop,
Oh.
that little note at the top of our article,
I know that note.
it says that Skype for Business Online, retired, 2021, gone.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, hold on, why are we even talking about this then?
Right. If it's gone, it's gone.
But here's the thing. This info, still super relevant. If you're working with Skype for Business Server, 2015, lots of places still rely on that, especially in these hybrid setups.
Think of it like, like a classic car, right? They might have stopped making them, but they're reliable. They still get the job done.
I love that analogy. Okay, so before we really get into a couple of prerequisites, got to make sure you've got those global administrator privileges, this deep dive. It assumes you're the one calling the shots, the key master.
The big cheese. You need that master key to unlock those phone system settings. You can't do anything without it.
And second, get that PowerShell ready to go.
Yeah.
We're talking remote PowerShell, folks.
PowerShell's your magic wand here. Just a few clicks, you can make things happen.
One last thing before we move on. This article, it focuses on enabling phone system for users who haven't used enterprise voice before.
Yeah.
If you've already got that going, there might be a few extra steps down the line. Just a heads up. All right, let's dive into the actual process.
Time to get our hands dirty.
This Microsoft Learn article, it lays it all out step by step, and we're going to break it down even further.
No need to be intimidated by tech.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So first things first, PowerShell. Got to fire it up.
Oh, yeah.
And don't even think about cutting corners, all right? Make sure you're running as administrator.
Got to.
Once you're in, we got to connect to Microsoft Teams. The article, it gives you the exact command. But the big thing, make sure you're using those global administrator credentials.
Super important, like flashing your ID to get into the VIP area.
Now for the fun part. Remember, set CSER.
Oh, yeah.
That CM deal it. That right there is about to be your new best friend.
Definitely.
Because this is how we actually do it. We flip the switch and bam, phone system features for our users. Yeah.
It's like a master key. Unlocks those calling features for each person.
The article focuses on two key properties, enterprise voice enabled and hosted voicemail. They sound kind of techy, I know.
A little bit, but they're actually pretty straightforward.
Enterprise voice enabled. It kind of does what it says on the tin, right? It turns on the phone system features, making and receiving calls, the core stuff.
The essential stuff.
And then there's hosted voicemail, cloud voicemail. Here we come.
Gotta love those email notifications, right?
Super handy. And you know what? The article, it's got this real-life example using a user, Bob Kelly.
Oh, right.
Shows you exactly how this command works in practice. For me, that's when it really clicks.
Oh, yeah. Seeing it in action makes a difference.
You can't just have the theory. And here's a bonus tip. You don't always have to use the username with this claim-elet. You can target by their IP address or email, even their display name in Active Directory. Talk about flexibility.
Admins love a bit of flexibility. Imagine having to do this for, like, hundreds of users. Being able to target them like that, game changer.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've enabled phone system, but we need to give our users a way to actually, make and receive those calls.
Right. They need a number.
Exactly. That's where line URIs come in. It's basically like giving each user their own special phone number, but within the Skype for Business world.
Makes sense.
And just like in real life, we want to make sure those numbers are all nice and tidy. That's why that normalized format is so important. Keeps things organized, avoids confusion later on. Now, the article, it shows us how to update that line URI using the Skype for Business Server control panel. Pretty user-friendly.
Look at user-friendly.
Me too. But I know some people, they love PowerShell. And for those folks, you can actually update those line URIs using commands.
There's always another way, right? Especially with IT.
For sure. Okay, so we got our users. They're enabled. They got their numbers. What's next?
What else is there?
Dial plans. We need to talk about dial plans.
Yeah.
Think of these like the rule book for calls. how they're dialed, how they're routed within your organization.
The rule book. Gotta have rules.
Keeps everything running smoothly. And just like with anything, there are different kinds of dial plans. You've got your global, your user, your site.
Right, different strokes.
But remember, we're focusing on hybrid here.
Yeah.
So in this case, site dial plans. Not really relevant for our online users. It's important to keep that straight.
Absolutely. And to actually assign these dial plans, we're going to use, you guessed it, another CMDlet. This one's called Grant C's Dial Plan.
Another one for the collection.
And don't worry, the article walks you through it. Gives you examples for individual users and for groups. They even show you how to use something called an LDAP filter to really get specific.
Sounds complicated.
It's really not. It's basically like using a filter to find the exact right users to apply that dial plan to.
Exactly.
Work smarter, not harder.
Right.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground. But there's one more piece of this puzzle, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Hit me with it.
Voice routing policies. Picture this. You've got your dial plans all set up, right?
Right. Alert.
But then 2.0 a.m., call comes in.
You going to route that the same way as during the day? Probably not.
Definitely not. Different rules for different hours. That's what's great about these voice routing policies, right? You can get super specific. How are we handling calls based on, like, time of day or the caller ID, even if the user's available or not?
It's like having a super smart receptionist.
Knows exactly what to do.
Exactly. They're one step ahead. And here's the thing. Even though when you've got phone system users, they get that default online voice policy, right? For the basics.
Right, the basics are covered.
It's those voice routing policies. That's the key. Got to make sure those calls are going where they need to go, especially in our hybrid world here.
It's an important difference. Those routing policies give you that control, the customization to make sure things are running smoothly.
And guess what? We can use our trusty PowerShell to manage those voice routing policies too.
No surprise there. What's the servlet this time?
Grant SCO's voice routing policy. Catchy, right?
I've heard worse.
And just like we talk about with those dial plans, the article gives you those examples. How to use it for one person, for a group, keep everything consistent.
Love consistency. Keeps things manageable.
Exactly. And if we need to, we can unassign those policies too. It's all about having those tools, that control. So there we have it. We've gone through it all, folks. Enabling phone system for your Skype, for business users.
In a hybrid environment, no less.
Hybrid's where it's at these days, right?
It's the reality for a lot of people. And we covered it all. Those first steps, setting everything up, then configuring those dial plans, and finally, those voice routing policies.
The essential ingredients to making it all work.
And throughout this whole journey, our good friend PowerShell was there, gave us the power to make it happen.
PowerShell, always there to lend a hand. Or a CMDlet.
Exactly. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. We've been in this hybrid world today, but with the way things are going, with Teams,
The cloud's calling, you're saying? It is. How do you think these ideas, this whole process, will change when everything's in the cloud?
It's going to be interesting to see how it all evolves.
For sure. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two. Go ready to tackle those phone system configurations. Until next time, happy configuring.